All right, so my name is Joey Lane. It's good to have everyone in this space tonight. My job tonight is to set the space. This is your night. If you are able to come on camera, because this is like a living room style setting. So if you need to, sit on the couch and have a nice cold or warm drink, have your dinner, just come and gather in this space with us. This was the request of Dr. Tanika Gayle. She didn't want a webinar style. She's like, I want to talk to people. I want to connect. I want to answer questions. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen, for taking the jump and coming on camera. I see you. Also, if you could put your name, your full name, and your pronouns, you rename yourself so we could identify who you are. And if you have questions as Dr. Tanika is having the conversation, feel free to raise your hands. She'll be pausing periodically to ask if you have any questions. So thank you once again for being in this space. Before we get started, I just want to go over quickly what the mission of Psychologists of Color is. The mission of Psychologists of Color Incorporated is to decrease stigma and increase access to mental health services within racially and ethnically diverse communities by significantly increasing the number of psychologists of color. And the event tonight is owning a group practice is not for the faint of heart. Take a deep breath. 1099s versus W2s and all of those good stuff. I just pulled that from Dr. Tanika, more on that. Just present a bio. Dr. Tanika Gayle is the owner of Collaborative Psychology Group and Visionary Consulting Incorporated, and has been an entrepreneur since 2010 and a group practice owner since 2015. Collaborative Psychology Group has 40 plus employees and 2 locations, and Visionary Consulting Incorporated helps businesses and owners elevate, expand, and create. So we're joined by Dr. Tanika Gayle tonight, who's helped others legally establish group practice ownership. Without further ado, Dr. Tanika Gayle, you have the floor.
Thank you for that introduction. I greatly appreciate it. I will actually just go back and say I honestly started kind of group practice in 2013, 2014, when I brought on my first psych assistant. And so that's kind of really how I got started into like, I want to do this larger than myself. And that was by bringing on psych assistants. In addition, most recently, which Samuel did not discuss, I am head of diversity, equity, and inclusion with Odify, which is a tech-based company that it's a mental health hub that connects enterprises to brick and mortar practices. So that's also one of my other roles as well, but I love everything that I do. But tonight, we are going to focus really on having a group practice and the ins and outs of having a group practice, kind of how to get started. So definitely, if you've got questions as I'm going through things, pause me so I can answer your questions. So I really want to start with asking everybody, like their purpose. Why do you want to start a group practice? Because that's really one of the questions that I always ask people, like, why? Why do you want to start a group practice? Don't be shy. I love to hear from people. Tell me like really why you want to start this journey of a group practice and having employees.
I know for me, it has a lot to do with kind of the unique intersections of my work. So I work with a lot of folks of color, and I also work with a lot of queer folks. And so I feel like there's great agencies to refer to for one of those, but not necessarily the intersection of both. And so I keep finding myself like doing the work and being very grateful for the opportunity, but then wishing that like there was a hub of resources, or what I was doing for my own practice kind of
Mhm.
had a bigger legacy, I think, than just me.
Great question. Great answer. Anybody else? On their reason, their purpose of why they wanted to go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Alexia.
Yeah.
I guess the existential answer would be that it has always been a goal. When I started my degree program, I said to myself, like, I want to do groups. And that was very clear because I very much understand personally, but through my own work, you know, the healing abilities of community and
Mhm.
healing in a community space. I think that that's, to me, what can be really powerful, especially among people of color.
Mhm.
So that's the existential answer. I've always wanted to, but I think a more realistic answer is just, you know, I want to scale. You know, I don't want to be in this situation for the rest of my life where it's just like, it's me
Yeah.
to a client and
Yes.
me to this amount of money. I want to be able to scale and grow and be able to, you know, kind of manage my life a little bit better and maintain balance between my work and my personal life. So
Thank you. Vanessa, Dr. Katz. Hi. You're muted.
Hi. Hi. It's so good to see you, Tanika.
I know. Great to see you.
Sorry for the bad angle. So I think for me, it's dual. I've been supervising for a long time. I'm the executive director of the Saturday Center, and I have my private practice. I love mentoring, and I feel like I want to also do it under my own umbrella because there are things that I would like to do differently. And it just happened that I got 2 psych assistants reach out to me who are Spanish speakers. You know, that's my first language. And I feel like there's a need for to meet the Latinx community. There's not enough therapists that are Latinos or that speak Spanish. So it just felt like, oh, okay, here they are. Should I just take them on, or should I just jump for it and start a group practice? So
Yeah.
thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. And so I will tell you what my initial intention was and my purpose. I was in solo practice for a couple of years, and I kept hearing horror stories of people going to therapy and either the therapist was falling asleep on them, or I kept hearing, my God, I can't find a Black psychologist. I can't find a Black therapist. I can't find this. And so that was my initial like, okay, well, I can't see 80 clients a week, even though I would love to help everybody. So let me kind of figure out. And it was a struggle to like, who am I going to refer to? Right. So I was like, okay, let me figure out how I can have all of this under one roof where these are clinicians that I know either because I've had some hand in training them and or people that were aligned to at that time really destigmatizing mental health for the Black community and being able to kind of, I know the term anti-racist is the buzzword now, but really being present and working with the Black folks. So that was like my initial intention. And I wanted to provide high quality service to the community from an insurance-based model because it really didn't matter at that point to me whether it was cash or insurance. I really wanted to primarily do insurance. And so that's why I initially started my group practice. But I will tell everybody, you really have to understand your purpose and your why. If part of your purpose and why is, you know, I want to make a grip of money and I don't want to work as much, I would say redefine that. Because initially it is a lot of time and a lot of work. And while your company can be very financially successful if your motivator is about the money. The money is going to come and go. It's going to go up and down depending on what's happening. And that really can't be the guiding force to why you really want to start a group practice. So in California, I would say when you are thinking about starting a group practice, it would be beneficial to have, I would, at least 4 to 6 months of savings. And I will go into a little more why you kind of want that amount in your savings account. But I will say in California, you must pay your employees biweekly or twice a month within the first 2 weeks of them starting, or like within the first 3 weeks of them starting. So if you are an insurance-based practice, we know reimbursement doesn't come that fast. And that is why I'm saying you need to have some kind of cushion to be able to manage payroll, plus pay your rent, your EHR systems, and all of that initially. When you're first deciding, you got to figure out, what is your business entity going to be? Are you going to be a sole prop group with a fictitious business name, or are you going to be an S corporation, a professional corporation? California does not permit LLCs, so you have to be one or the other. Many people think that if they create an S corp, that protects their assets or their liability. That's not the case. An S corp is really for tax reasons. And you really need to have the guidance of your CPA to really understand, okay, is it time that I should be an S corp, or should I just stay an LLC? We have our malpractice insurance and we have our professional for our business insurance that really helps with, like, if there's a liability of some sort, but it does not necessarily protect your personal assets. Okay. So I want people to really understand, creating an S corp is not about protection of assets. It's really just about taxes and how you pay taxes. When you are an S corp, you as the business owner, you do need to put yourself on payroll. So that's something to think about as well. As a sole prop, all the money that kind of comes in is really much your money. As an S corp, a corporation, you have to have a business account and you have to be on payroll. As you are forming these various entities, once you make that decision, you need to have an MPI 2. We all as individuals, we have our MPI 1. When you create an entity, it needs to have an MPI 2. And then, of course, that entity is going to have an EIN to go along with it. I do not recommend you operate, even if you are a sole prop, you should never operate with your Social Security number. Because if you have to put it on a super bill or you have to send an invoice to a client, you do not want them having your Social Security number. Create an EIN, and that's free. You can just go and create one. And it's tied to your business. Any questions just about MPI 2, business account, sole prop versus a corporation?
I have a question.
Yes.
So currently I have an MPI 1, an MPI 2, but I have the same EIN number. Do I need to switch that out, or does that not make a difference?
So you're a sole prop, or are you a corporation?
Well, I'm an LLC, so I'm in Maryland. I'm based in Maryland.
Oh, you're Maryland. Okay.
Yeah, so we have LLC, but I have I have an MPI 1 and an MPI 2 for my private practice, and then for myself as a provider. But the EIN is the same.
In Maryland, it could be a little different than in California. I really only know California law because that's where my corporation is. But I do know when my lawyer applied for my corporation, I did obtain a new EIN number.
Okay.
She did that.
Okay,
State issued a new EIN number that went with that corporation.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other questions about that piece? Okay.
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Hi. Thank you for putting this together. I have a question about
Yes.
when you for legal advice. How do you know that someone is experienced, or where do you go to find someone experienced in assisting you with making sure you have the right documentation for the states that you're licensed in?
So I would always say definitely, and I talk about this a little later, but definitely you need to have a healthcare attorney. You need to also have, and a healthcare attorney can also understand employment law. So do the research and figure out, and or ask around, like, hey, who's your attorney for your company? And they will be able to kind of guide you. But also you may have like HR. So I have an HR consultant as well. And so she's got like all of the proper documentation as far as how to onboard or hire people, things that they need to fill out. And then my healthcare attorney makes sure all that's in place, that it is updated, as well as some other nuances. Does that answer your
Okay,
question?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Having an attorney is, and I will go through like the absolute things you need to have. Having an attorney is one of them. At this point in time, my attorney is on retainer, so I just pay them monthly. I can text, I can call, unlimited, but I do know some people that, they just reach out to their attorney when they need to do so, or to look at documents or what have you. Going back to California, whatever you decide now, it's time to think about hiring practices. So this is just specific to California, okay? W-2 versus 1099. In California, we legally cannot have 1099s. Everybody needs to be a W-2 employee. 1099s are also called independent contractors. In California, January 1 of 2020, AB5, also known as the ABC test, that came into effect. I want to say one of the Uber companies or so, they might have started, Dynamax started that case. And then it really became the umbrella to how a company can operate here in California. Please, there are plenty of group practices out there that say, hey, I can 1099 you. Part of the ABC test says they automatically assume you have employees, but part of it is if you are doing work that the company is established to do, you cannot be a 1099. So I'm a psychologist. My professional corporation was established to be therapeutic services, mental health, whether that is psychological assessments, therapy, even medication management. Because that is my entity as a therapist, my company was built to do therapy. Any other therapy providing services, they are providing a service that my company would customarily do. Who I could 1099 would be perhaps a dietitian. That's not a part of my company. That's not why my company was created. So maybe I 1099 a dietitian. However, even though my company was not created and is a dietary is not a part of my license, if at any point I want to guide their work, so if I say, I need you to work 20 hours, and it's going to be in the evening, I then am instilling some control over the work that they are doing, and therefore now they are an employee. The moment you implement a little bit of control over an individual, a schedule, a system that they have to do, you have made them an employee. They are not a contractor. A contractor would be somebody who is coming in with all of their own supplies and goods and then contracting to offer that service to your company. They would tell you what their rates are going to be. They would tell you what hours they are going to work or not work. They would tell you if they are going to use your EHR system or not. They would then be invoicing you, and you would then be paying them. They have to invoice you for their services. In California, we get hung up. No, I can 1099. In California, no, you cannot. There are plenty of companies out there. They have 1099 employees. And unfortunately, they are operating illegally. All it's going to take is for an employee to go to the labor board and or the IRS. And right now we are seeing the IRS auditing, because when you have 1099s, you're not paying payroll tax. When you have a 1099, you are not giving them the mandatory 24 hours of sick time. In California, these are things that you have to do. So not only do we have the AB5 law for California, but at the federal level, we also have the Borrello, and that's tied to the IRS. So you have to pass both. And again, both of them say if a person is coming in performing work that the company would customarily do, they cannot be an independent contractor. If any of you are even working in a company where you're a 1099, you got to talk to the owner, whoever hired you on, because you can't, especially in California. If you are pre-licensed, you absolutely cannot be a 1099 because they are offering you supervision. And I believe even APA, BBS, all of the various entities state you have to be an employee of that organization. Thoughts, questions, concerns about 1099 before I talk about psychologists and our exemption with it?
Tanika, not directly 1099, but you mentioned here, the 24-hour sick pay, that's 24 hours a year?
Correct.
How do you handle that or manage that?
It's mandatory. And so if they are out sick, you pay them whatever you would be paying them as if they were, some people pay them like their admin rate. So they have their billable, their clinical rate, and their admin rate. So maybe your 24 hours falls under your admin rate versus your clinical rate that you would be giving them.
Okay.
But you absolutely have to pay it. And then right now there is the COVID. So if somebody, catches COVID and they are out of the office, if they are part-time, you have to do the average number that they would see, the average amount of hours, I should say, that they would see in a 2-week period. And that's what you have to pay them. If they are full-time, you have to pay them 80 hours. I have had to pay a couple of employees 80 hours of work. They weren't seeing clients, but that's what the state mandates for California. With W-2 employees, remember, any hours worked, you have to pay them, whether it's a no-show. So there are various, I guess, structures you could set up. You can set up salary. And so no matter how many clients somebody sees, they are salary. But if you're going to do salary, then most people have built in, and I have built in into my company, productivity. So they are salary and they have to see a certain amount of clients, and that's their salary. There is hourly. And so based on when they're in the office, if their schedule is like 2 to 9 or something of the sort, they're hourly, you're paying them hourly for that. There's per client hour. So if people, they've got clients and then maybe they have a no-show, you're paying them still for their billable time. And then you would pay for that no-show, maybe not at the billable rate, maybe it's at their admin rate, but even still, you have to pay them. California is not the easiest state to have a company in. It is very expensive to have a company here, but it's, once you get it down, it's absolutely doable. And this is why I talk about you do need to have some kind of savings and be paying people an appropriate amount, because sick time you have to pay, this COVID pay you have to pay, plus all other the expenses are their EHR system, your work comp insurance, their malpractice insurance, all of that stuff. As an organization, you should be paying as well.
Is there anything that they can pay? Can they pay their own malpractice, is what I heard?
So some companies have where it is in there. If it's not in your employee handbook, the expectation is then that you're paying it.
Okay.
Or you can offer like a stipend to their malpractice insurance. They pay, of course, for their own CEUs and to maintain their license in order to do their job. Okay. So for psychologists, under AB 5, we did receive an exemption. But that exemption is tricky. In order to meet the exemption, so somebody could 1099, like, so an LCSW or an LMFT, they could 1099 me to come in and just do psychological testing, assessments, because that's for the most part outside their scope of practice. Their company was not built to do psychological assessment because it's outside their scope of practice. And so that makes sense. Within my company, because I am a psychologist, I do know how to do testing. I could not 1099 a psychologist. It would be a very hard argument to make in order to 1099 a psychologist. There are lots of psychologists that do 1099 other psychologists within their company. But again, it goes back to, if the company was created with the purpose of providing therapy, that psychologist coming in and doing therapy is not doing anything different than what the company was created. And if you have like this expectation of, oh, well, I would like for them to do like a 10-minute consultation. You right there just now put an expectation, you're guiding their work. You've made them an employee. Going into a nursing home, that's different. Nursing homes aren't built to, do therapy. So you can be 1099 to go into a nursing home and do assessments there. But within a typical group practice, mental health practice, it is a very hard pass in order to 1099 people. Thoughts or questions about that piece? Okay, I already said you do have to pay for all hours worked, whether they have clients or not. And so here at my company with my model, most of my employees are salary. Most, they are meeting their productivity. And so if a client no shows, if there's a late cancellation, whether we receive payment or not, I'm still paying them their salary. If you are going to do an hourly rate, I highly recommend you do a flat hourly rate versus a percentage, because it gets tricky with calculations. The intake may cost more than a 9-0, like a 45-minute session versus a 60-minute session. You then are doing all kinds of percentage calculations, and the more people you have, it's too complicated. And then if you're insurance, it's really complicated because all of the insurances they reimburse at such different rates. To do a percentage, it makes it hard to get it accurate. So I say pay a flat hourly rate. It's clean. Your employees know what it is. No questions typically asked. This is what you get paid per hour, no matter what we get reimbursed.
Dr. Gayle, a question about salary your employees. Is that something just for your full-time persons, or do you salary and just do a percentage of that yearly salary for part-time persons, if you have any?
So salary is really my full-time. And when I say full-time, yes, they give me 40 hours, but they're not seeing 40 hours of clients. They have their productivity, and I think productivity, depending, is somewhere between 28 to 32 clients a week. And as long as they are meeting that consistently, then that's their salary. I really don't have, sorry about that. I really don't have many part-timers. I think maybe 2 or 3, and they're just part-time hourly.
Okay, thank you.
So again, with California, some of the mandatory things are CalSavers and a retirement plan of some sort. You have to, that is mandatory for all employees. CalSavers, you don't necessarily need to contribute to. It is state run, but you do need to have some kind of retirement set up for employees. The 24-hour sick time is also mandatory. And then of course, right now, because I believe it was extended to the end of the year, any kind of COVID pay. Best practice in a group practice is vacation time and health insurance. So where I am today, I do offer health insurance to my employees, as well as they get vacation time. And that's, as you're creating their salary, you just got to know, like, okay, how much vacation time makes sense, because they're also getting their 24 hours of sick time, to where you're still making a little bit of profit here. Health insurance in California, we are obligated to pay 50% of the premium for your employee. Now, if they want to bring on their spouse or their kids, they can pay that 100%. We just are obligated to pay the 50%. Some places give a stipend, but even the stipend has to add up to 50% of whatever somebody's monthly premium is. So I just across the board, 50% I pay for their health insurance, for their dental, and for their vision. And those are perks that when people are looking for a job, they want health insurance nowadays. They want to know that they are having some kind of retirement plan. It allows definitely for employees to stay longer because these are things that they are getting and they aren't paying for that 100% out of their pocket. Cash-based versus an insurance-based practice. My company is primarily insurance-based. We accept all, for the most part, all major insurances except for a few. With that, I would say most insurance-based companies are recession-proof because when people start losing jobs, they can get on whether it's state Medi-Cal or what have you, and insurance will still pay for services. During a recession or during difficult times, most folks, not everybody, but most folks don't have, I don't know, $600 of expendable cash to throw out for therapy. So therapy does become one of those services that they stop going to weekly, or maybe they're just doing it once a month. So that's something to just think about as you're trying to figure out, should you be cash-based or should you be insurance? With insurance, you can grow a lot faster. You also don't have to market yourself as much. I've never marketed myself. The only time is because I now have deaf employees, and that's a specialty. So I have marketed to the deaf community, but outside of that, I've never marketed my company, and we are very full with always a wait list. Cash-based practices, you do need to market a little harder in order to really stand out and to be known. Not that you can't, but it does take a little more effort for cash-based practices to grow. And then again, like I said, when the recession hits, many people that I know that have cash-based practices, they do take a bit of a hit. Questions about that part? For insurances and reimbursement rates, some of that is county dependent. So LA County may pay a little higher than, say, San Bernardino County, or Orange County may pay a little more than Riverside County. I don't know that that's the case, but I do know the reimbursement rates oftentimes are based on geographical areas. So that also is something to keep in mind. Like if your friend is in a different county and they say, hey, well, this is my rate, it could very well be they negotiated a higher rate, or it's because it's that county's rate. Yes, Vanessa, I see your hand.
Sorry, multiple questions. What about for your individual practice? Do you also take insurance for your individual practice, or how do you separate that, or do you?
So for me individually, I'm a part of my company. So whatever the company takes is what I take. Yes, because my specialty is sex and intimacy. There are clients that will waive out of using their health insurance, and so they sign a waiver, and they may pay cash.
Okay, and you can do that. They can know about the waiver. Okay.
But there does need to be a waiver in place. And now, like this whole good faith agreement or no surprise act, you have to like really put things detailed for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
But I don't see that many clients nowadays either. Any other questions regarding that piece?
I think a big question I have is you said you don't see that many clients. So I think something that's important to me is how heavy is the admin and how much do you find yourself able to realistically still have leftover time?
Let me tell you about my structure. And this is something you need to think about long term with any company. Like, what is your organizational level going to look like? So for my company, I have 40 employees. I have myself, I'm the owner. I have a clinical director. She falls underneath of me. Underneath of my clinical director, she has 3 clinical supervisors. And the clinical supervisors manage whether they're pre-licensed and or licensed therapists, they manage those individuals. I also have an office manager. My office manager, she manages my receptionist, my admin team. And so I have 2 locations. I believe I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 receptionists. She handles that. My receptionist, they answer the telephone from, because we're open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I always have a receptionist on duty. They answer all the telephones, they collect all the co-pays, they book all of the appointments, they do all of that. I have 3 nurse practitioners. They report primarily to my clinical director and or one of my clinical supervisors who is also a QA person to make sure documentation and all of that is appropriate, because when you bring medication services into a practice, you increase the likelihood of getting audited, unfortunately. I also have an in-house billing team. And so I have a billing manager, and she manages the billers that are here at the company. So for me, the people that I really only talk to would be my clinical director, my office manager, and the billing manager. That's my leadership team. I am not involved in the hiring process. Unfortunately, it has its pros and its cons. There are therapists that have been hired recently, and I've not met them. It does create this distance because now they know they're working for a company. They're not working for Dr. Gayle. Anything that happens here, it's not about Dr. Gayle. It is about Collaborative Psychology Group. And so you do want to, at some point, put some distance between yourself and your employees, because whether you have to put them on a correction action plan, whether you have to terminate people, that doesn't come from me. It comes from either HR, because I have an HR consultant, or it comes from clinical supervisor or clinical director. Interviews are the clinical supervisors and the clinical directors.
And then was the HR consultant like a big investment? And what was the tipping point employee-wise for you to decide, okay, this is big enough that.
So I was not that large when I brought an HR person on. When I knew I needed one was when I had that first employee that, just because they're therapists, they were very unprofessional. Their documentation was not being completed. They were showing up late to their sessions. And so I needed to really figure out, like, California law. Yes, we are an at-will state, but are there steps I needed to take? Can I just terminate somebody? Do I need to put them on a performance plan? Like, what needs to happen? And then, of course, just in hiring, making sure I had all of the right forms, because the forms that I thought I had, I was missing certain forms that you do need. And so, yeah, that's for me as far as admin wise. The admin stuff, I'm constantly creating and growing, but I'm not in the day-to-day things that are happening at the company. My leadership and my leadership meetings, they are telling me, and yes, I'm looking to make sure that billing's happening, claims are being, like, things are being paid, but they kind of tell me what's going on. I can therefore do clinical work, but I can also be somewhere else and be creative because I have that leadership team. They know my vision, they know my purpose, and they operate accordingly to that. When they hire, I engage in intentional hiring practices. So they know it's about inclusion, diversity. Those are the candidates that we are looking for. That's how we hire. They know it's to provide high quality service. So if something, they know what to look for, questions to ask. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, thanks for doing this training tonight. I so appreciate it because I've really been on the fence. Should I grow or not? Just, just listening to, I guess, some of the headaches and the Facebook groups, and all of that make me think, oh my gosh, no. But anyway, I wanted to ask, do any of your leadership team members, are they required to see clients or not?
So yes, my clinical director, I think maybe she has 5 clients, which, isn't a lot because she's doing a lot of other things. My clinical supervisors, they, yes, are seeing clients. In California, and maybe this is other states, but in California, my clinical supervisors can have 6 pre-licensed therapists under them. So they, for the most part, have 6 pre-licensed, except when it comes to psychologists, we are still limited to just 3. So they are definitely doing individual supervision. We have group supervision, consultation meetings, professional development, but they do have their own clients. They probably are seeing, because they are all full-time, they probably are seeing, I don't know, 15 clients a week because of all the other supervisions that they have to do. Some are seeing a little bit more, but yeah, it's probably 15 to 20 clients a week. In California, there was the passage, and maybe it's other states, but SB 855, it said for the most part that most insurances must allow supervisory billing. So if you're an insurance-based practice, Anthem, Blue, I want to say Aetna, there's a couple of other insurances. The pre-licensed therapists can see those providers and the billing is under the supervisor. Back in the day, they would call that insurance fraud. Like, no, you cannot do that. But when this law got passed, I want to say last year, and you guys can look it up, SB 855, it now incorporates supervisory billing. And so that also allows a company to grow faster because pre-licensed folks, you're paying them a little less because you have to pay for their supervision, all of these other non-billable time, but you are getting reimbursed at whatever their supervisor's licensure level is.
Thank you.
Another special for just my practice, so I have a psychologist supervisor and she has postdocs. I also still have postdocs or psych assistants under us. We do a lot of assessment, a lot of testing. Insurances, if you know how to bill correctly, you can definitely get reimbursed between $1,800 to $3,000 for some insurances for some of those psych assessments. A lot of our psych assessments, though, are cash based because they are what we call independent educational evals. And those are reimbursed at a higher rate, probably like $6,000 to $9,000 for something like that. And then I have contracts with Regional Center. And then we're just about to sign a contract with Department of Rehab for the state of California to do statewide testing. And so as a group, the more you become established, the more people can give you like these bigger contracts because you have employees to service providers or to service clients. Questions about that piece? So you can bring on pre-licensed people. You can have 6 under you. And I would say if you're taking insurance, please do so. It gives them the experience as well as good supervision, and you can bill accordingly. But like I said, for psych associates, it's only 3. I now want to talk about virtual versus brick and mortar practices. When the pandemic happened, everybody went virtual, and you saw all of these virtual practices popping up. Health and safety is absolutely important. I did not go virtual. For 2 weeks, I made a slight transition because I needed to figure out, because in California, they were also creating like various, like public health was coming in and saying various things needed to be in place. So once I had those things in place, then I brought most people, I created a hybrid model, and many people were in office, many people were home. At this point in time, I would say 98% of my employees are in office. We still have some that are doing, some telehealth days, but the calls that we get to my company, 85–90% of clients want to be seen in office. When we say, hey, our telehealth clinician has an opening sooner than somebody in office, they are quick to say, I will find somebody in office. Clients want to resume to sitting on the couch, being in the room with the therapist, developing that intimate relationship. Clients, many are over being on the screen. Many clients don't necessarily have the privacy when they're home. Kids are running around. Somebody might be standing outside their door. They don't have the internet. They're doing it at work. And so that is just something to think about as you are growing. Do you create a hybrid model, which I would say, yes, create that, because you can hire more people, especially if you're limited office space. But try not to just have a virtual only practice, because you're going to miss out on a lot of clients that do want to be seen in office. And then if you're in office, definitely continue to follow California public health, the mask mandate, like everything that is out there right now. Any thoughts or concerns about that piece? Okay, so what things that I absolutely recommend, if possible, have most things in-house. So if you can have an in-house billing company, do that. If you can have an in-house admin team, do that. Everything, try to do it in-house because you can have more regulations over what's happening when it's in-house. And you're creating your systems so that you're training people and they are abiding by the systems that you know work for your company. Definitely have a live receptionist to answer your phone because that increases your conversion rate. When people are leaving messages and you have to call them back, the phone tag, the back and forth, most likely they found another provider or they get frustrated because they're not able to speak to somebody. And that's why I always have my phone staffed from the time we open to the time we close. It's also why admin, they collect all the co-pays. It's nothing my therapists do. They don't know anything about co-pays. Admin, they do all of that piece. They send out the consent forms. They set everybody up in their portal. Admin, they really are the backbone. They are the face of the company. So if you can have receptionists, absolutely have them in-house. No different than when you go to your doctor's office and it's the receptionist that greets you and takes your copay and your insurance card and all of that. That's exactly how my company is, how it operates. Other things, like I said, billing. Definitely hire in-house billing. There are billing companies you can hire. I think on average, they take between 6 to 10% of whatever that you collect. Because I love to train, I have billers, and then I'm also connected to a billing school. So we always have billing students that have to do 200 to 250 hours. You're not paying them and they're billing for you. And so it allows you to maybe have like your billing manager, 1 or 2 other main billers, and then you have a bunch of billing students. Because lots of these professions, they need places for people to do their externship. And if you can become one of those places, even better. Other things that I want to say, delegation. Be able as a business owner to know how to delegate. That was my hardest thing, giving up that control because I wanted to control everything, but I also knew I was burning myself out. And with 40 employees, it's way too much. So if you have a great leadership team or other people that can take on different things, delegate. Delegation allows for more minds, for you to grow more, for you to have more creative ideas in a company. I now have a social committee. That's not something I ever would have thought about or came up with, but we have this social committee and they are just happy as a clam doing all these fun activities, and it really increases the culture of the company. People don't just come and go, they're hanging out, they're building relationships. They really are, having a grand old time, in addition to doing therapy, because we know therapy is emotionally exhausting. And so if you can just have somebody else that hey, you can just kick it with in the office, it really increases morale within a company. So delegate, because people also like to feel that they have a voice in a company, feel like they have some control over certain things. And again, it keeps them with you longer. Understand, you also can't do this in isolation. So I have my people that they are all, for the most part, business owners. They all, for the most part, are all female identified. Many have children, some are married. And so they understand my stress of managing being a wife, a mom, running a business, having zero time. Like, they get it. There's not all this extra explanation. And so I would say you definitely need your people that they get it. They're not offended if you don't text back right away. They also help you in that creativity process. They're like, hey, have you ever thought about this? So definitely have a core of close people that you can rely on as you are going through this, because if you don't have a team, there are the headaches of having employees. Another nugget that I wish somebody told me earlier on was your employees are not your friends. I used to get heartbroken when somebody left because I was like, hey, we're friends. They're going to be with me forever. No, it's not personal. My employees are not my friends. And then if you have to do a corrective action, you got to understand the boundaries. You got to be able to have hard conversations. And when it's your friend or somebody you think like, hey, we can hang out outside of work and all of that, it gets very complicated. Yes, I am very close to my leadership team. And I would say I am connected to all of my other employees, but there is that boundary where, and they know at the end of the day, I'm the boss or the head or whatever. Yes, we laugh together, but we're not friends. We're colleagues, we're working together, and they're an employee of Collaborative Psychology Group. Other nuggets. Like I said, you can't do it all alone. You definitely need to have an attorney in your back pocket. You also need to have a solid CPA. I have switched CPAs. So when I was smaller, I had one that really knew how to work with a smaller company. As I got larger, you need a CPA that knows how to work with larger corporations with higher revenue. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that does not want to write that check at the end of the year and pay these high taxes. And so all of the little advice that my CPA gives me, and we meet every quarter, really cuts down on the amount of taxes that I have to pay. So definitely find yourself a good tax person, one that maybe even understands mental health companies or just private practice, because a medical practice is the same. Our business is unique. Our revenue, insurances, all of that, it's unique. So you definitely need to have a CPA that understands kind of the medical field. What questions do you have? I know I covered a lot of different things, so I definitely want to answer some questions. Yes, I see a hand raised. Dr. Magni, I hope I did not mispronounce your last name.
No, you didn't mispronounce my last name.
Okay.
So I have a question. I'm based in New York,
Mhm.
and I know in New York, for some practices, in order to participate with insurance companies, there's a whole application process where you have to become a licensed facility with the Office of Mental Health. Is that something you have to do in California, and is that something that's necessary to do in general?
Yeah, so in California, there are group contracts and there are facility contracts. And many of those are regulated by how many providers you're adding on. So initially, I did have a couple of group contracts. A lot of my contracts have been transitioned to facility contracts, and that's because I have as many clinicians as I do, as well as because I have med management here. So I did not go into the process of bringing on a prescriber because that's just a whole nother line of business. And I would not recommend somebody just starting out to have a prescriber because they're expensive. And it's another liability with whether somebody overdoses or the authorizations, re-auths of medication. But here in California, it is either you have group contracts or you have facility contracts.
See, do you know if that is required in New York to have you have to go through OMH to have a facility contract?
I'm sorry, I don't know that piece as far as New York.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny, I see your hand raised.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Question. So when it comes to like an EHR, do you have a particular one that you found has, because I know there's so many that could hold like the volume that you had planned for, and how that's been moving for you?
So I will just list the EHR systems that I know that are out there. So I know Simple Practice is a big one that's out there. Therapy Notes is another EHR system that's out there. So I actually helped create, it's called Therapy IQ. It's an EHR system that's out there. At the time in which I helped create it, I really did it because I wanted to increase access. So when I was with Therapy Notes for the longest time, but in order for clients to like sign documents, they had to download it, print it, sign it, then upload it. And it just didn't work for me. I wanted to be able to send clients documents. They can do an electronic live signature, and then they submit it back. So that was why I helped facilitate the creation of another EHR system, because access and reducing barriers is another huge, important value of mine. So, but those I do know are there's others out there. I think there's a Intake Q or something like that that's out there. But yeah, Therapy Notes, I mean, it worked for me for the longest until, and as well, when I brought on prescribers, Therapy Notes did not have e-prescribed, and I wanted an EHR system that had e-prescribed in it. I think they do now, but at the time that I brought on my prescribers, it did not.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. I have Therapy Notes. I love it, but I know it's going to go up to a certain point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Stacy, I see Stacy's
Yeah.
hand raised. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, thanks so much. I just had a question. I was just thinking about your earlier point where you were talking about just having a company in California is so expensive. And when you were talking about all the different things that you need to provide for employees, I was just thinking about, I've recently started applying to some insurance panels, and then the reimbursement rates that I'm getting back are like, they're just so low. So I'm just trying to think about the math and how, at what point do you actually, how do we turn a profit when reimbursement rates seem so low? So I just want to ask, maybe as your company grows bigger, are you just able to negotiate higher and higher rates? And maybe that helps, but yeah, just the math is not quite adding up to me.
I completely understand that. Yes. So, I would say with insurance rates, you may be paying about 60% to your employer, your employee. And so whatever your rates are, kind of do the average calculation of about 60%. And that is what you're going to perhaps pay them. You can negotiate your rates as you get higher, as you are in business longer and longer. So every year or every 6 months, you can send in a request for higher rates. And then you can get to a place. So I'm credentialed with Kaiser. My Kaiser contract, it doesn't matter who at the company sees those clients, it's all reimbursed at the psychologist rate. So we know as psychologists, we get reimbursed higher than LMFTs, LCSWs, because my company was created by psychologists, then everybody is reimbursed at the psychologist rate.
Oh, great. Okay.
Then I would also say you really may not make much of a profit. Maybe around that 6th to 8th employee is when you start truly making some kind of a profit.
I see. Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah, thank you.
I saw another hand, but I can't see everybody.
It's Amanda. Amanda had her hand raised.
Okay, yes, Amanda. Amanda, you're muted.
Good evening. Thank you so much for doing this. This is great information. So the SB 855 is California specific. I am out of Florida. Do you know the language or who I could speak with in the credentialing process? What should I specifically be asking for to ensure that intermediate licensees could see clients?
Ask for, do they permit supervisory billing?
Supervisory. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Definitely pick my brain while I'm here. I know I probably didn't hit everything, but I was like, okay, I really wanted you guys to have like the nuggets of the foundation to get started and go from there.
And Dr. Tanika, I'm wondering if we could work with you in developing a resource page of like all of the links that you said to share with the participants. I wonder if that would be helpful, like to the participants.
Yes, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you. I'm wondering, of course, you're at a wonderful level with regard to employees and supervisorial staff. As you were developing and getting there, clearly you were having to do more of that work. How did you, I don't even know quite how to frame it, but how did you know to start letting go and needing to hire some of those other persons? I guess I'm wondering about the transition.
Yeah, the transition for me occurred when I realized me sitting in the chair, meaning behind closed doors with a client, I could not attend to a lot of other things that were happening in the company. And I felt like the company, like I was losing touch with employees. I was losing touch with like some of the things that were happening here. I was having more issues within my company. I wasn't able to really put a lot of systems in place. People were leaving. And so at that point, I knew, okay, I have to rethink this and do this a little bit differently. I cannot be in the chair, try to supervise everybody, try to manage everything that's happening, billing. And so at that point was when I really said, and at that point I was probably working 100 hours a week or more. I said, I can't. And so that's really when I brought in my first set of supervisors to just at least help with that part. as well as to help with like the cohesiveness of the culture within the company and the morale of the company. And when I was recognizing people were just like coming in, doing the work and leaving. And I knew I didn't want a place where people would just come in, they weren't really talking much, see their clients, and they were leaving. That just didn't feel good to my soul. So that's also when I decided to make the transition. And I felt stuck. And I knew also that I was in the process of opening a second office location, and I couldn't open a second office location just by myself.
Wait, thank you.
Mhm. It says Queen.
Yes, my name is Queen. Hi, thank you so
Hi.
much. I am in the process of growing from a solo practitioner to a group. I have brought on some ASW. I'm a social worker. So I have people who are working for me part-time, but I very much would like to have like a full-time, be able to, have a full-time practice. And my question, I guess, is I'm struggling with, I can pay them or reimburse them some sort of fee for the services that they provide to patients. But what about how do you pay people for, for social workers? We do a lot of case management, and so that's not fee for service. That's calling a social worker who, or a teacher or something, whatever, something beyond just the service of the therapy. How did you generate the reserves to pay for people's time to do other things, or even what you just said, staying in the office and, having it be a job where you're paying for their time hours versus you saw this hour, so you're getting your split or whatever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So before I started the group, I really, I worked a lot as a sole practitioner, and pretty much 50 to 75% of what I had made over a course of a couple of years, I saved. And so I did have a lot of reserve, a pretty solid cushion that when I brought people on, it wasn't as stressful. However, there are lots of things that we cannot bill insurance for. So as long as you create a fee sheet, you can charge the client for that service. I have a fee sheet. There are things, if we have to consult with a teacher, the client is aware they're going to have to pay cash for that because that's something that they want us to do, but we can't bill your insurance for it. If they want us to attend a meeting at their school, and they're aware they're going to have to pay for that because we can't bill your insurance. If they're wanting certain reports, we collect fee for that. So there definitely are certain things that you should have a fee sheet for, that you can charge the client for those services that are needed. Now, if it's like a CPS report and those kinds of things, no, you're not charging a client to make a CPS report on them. But some of these other things that they want us to do, absolutely.
And are you open to sort of, I don't know, I mean, is that available? Can we connect with you maybe outside of the call to get things like that? Or are you open to sharing that?
Oh yeah, you can absolutely contact me. If somebody can drop it in the chat, but you can definitely email me because that's what my consulting business does. But you can definitely email me and I can help you figure out like when you should be charging the client for as a cash price for certain things, because you can't bill the insurance, but you also have to pay your employee to do these things.
Okay, I'm gonna be a customer. Thank you.
You are welcome.
I had one more question about kind of the onboarding process. So my understanding is that when you hire someone, to go through like the insurance credentialing process, that takes some amount of time. So I was just curious, like kind of what that timeline typically looks like. How long are people kind of waiting to start work? Kind of what's an acceptable amount of time, that kind of thing.
So I don't know if you guys recently heard, there was another bill that was passed that stated insurances need to credential within 60 days, which is a good thing because some insurances were taking 6 months, a year, what have you. And I cannot remember the actual numbers of that, but it was just recently signed into law or into effect. However, because of the certain contracts that I have, many of my employees could start within about 3 weeks. And because we have direct contact with certain insurances companies, we can get them on a lot faster. I would say though, on average, it can range between 30 days to 90 days. Back in the day, I would tell people, I'm giving you an offer, because in California, you don't do contracts, you do an employee offer letter. Here's your offer letter, and their start date would be 90 days from the date that I'm giving them the offer letter. I would also say, please stay at your current position. And when we start getting the acceptances, we will let you know. And at that point, give your 2 weeks or give your 4 weeks, depending on how long you've been at your place of service.
Okay.
They then would do so. And then by the time they started, everybody pretty much had a full caseload.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I think we have about, what, 4 minutes?
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
4 minutes remaining.
Yeah, go ahead. Question?
This is Queen again. I'm sorry, I couldn't find the hand. Do you feel comfortable like sharing anybody that you would recommend for an attorney and or what do you call it? Accounting? Or do you have a group or listing or something to work with?
Yeah, where are you located?
I am in Antioch, California, about 50 miles northeast of San Francisco.
So let me reach out to some of my colleagues that may be near you, because it would be hard for you to have a CPA down here. Because I also think you need to kind of go in person with your CPA and like have conversations and all of that. So let me look up there. As far as an attorney, I mean, I can give you my attorney. His name is Matthew. I can definitely provide attorney names, or you can look at like who is your local firm up there that does medical companies.
Should I just get in contact with you to get that information?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Well, I will say that this has been an absolute pleasure. Hold on. To kind of have this conversation and to share I hope it was helpful information with all of you. You definitely can reach out to Psychologists of Color, which is a nonprofit organization that many of you guys know that I am, an advisory board member. And it is to increase persons of color into the mental health field. You can always donate to the organization because we do help those that are undergrad and grad and helping, figure out how to pass the EPPP and all of the things that come along with becoming a psychologist in this field. And you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, our website. You can, like I said, donate to us and also complete our needs assessment and for things that you may need. And we can definitely provide more of these kinds of trainings and talks for you all. Okay. Thank you. It was such an honor to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tanika Gayle. Thank you everyone for being a part of this space. This, I call it the living room space. Have a great evening.